the quote "suffer with meaning" is really, if you start to attach meaning to your suffering, it ceases to be suffering, and it turns into a lesson or some sort of growth journey. You know, so I always believe that if we can find meaning in whatever's happening to us in life, then we can actually pursue it or get through it, or at least learn from it.
So one thing that I've picked up from the conversations that we've had on the platform is that I literally just get into the flow of things without just taking a moment to say hi to everybody and officially welcome you to the PITCHSIDE podcast. This is a platform where we have authentic cricket stories, one episode at a time. And today I'm joined by NIC, who is a high performance and mental coach. I really want to get into the heart of what mental toughness is all about, and I think he's the perfect person to really delve into it. He was recommended to me by Coach Sibia, and if he recommends someone to be on this platform, you must know that you're a big deal. Hello, Nick. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm good. So firstly, how do you know Coach Sia actually?
Coach Sia and I met in the Western Cape. I think he was just starting to coach the under-15 side at the Western Province youth teams, and then I started working with those teams. He actually brought me, and I met him through some cricket friends, and then he said, well, we need someone to come work with our young boys, so introduced me to the setup there, and then we started a journey together. Yeah.
And talking about cricket friends, I mean, let's just talk about your journey with cricket and how you fell in love with the game.
Hansi Cronje is how I fell in love with the game. When I was a young boy, I think many boys my age, he was kind of the hero. And then that got me playing, and I mean, since then it's just been cricket as the number one sport. Since a young age.
That's quite interesting, because you're a high performance coach, but I think the beauty about the role that you do is that you got to play the game. So what do you remember about your playing days?
Yeah, I think my favorite cricket was always school cricket, and I'll never forget that when we left school, I can't even remember who told me it, but someone said to me, remember these moments, because this is going to be the funnest cricket you ever play. And it was. So I look back fondly on the school cricket, just because you're with your friends, you take it seriously, but it's not that serious. There's no money involved or expectations involved. So my best memories of cricket was definitely from school. Yeah.
And some of your biggest learnings playing cricket at such a tender age?
Yeah, I really think cricket is the practice ground for life. It's not fair, and so many things can go against you. So I think in every match, there's a learning. You know, you get a bad decision or a bad pitch, or the weather can cause you to fail and then not make a team, and all of these things, and that's all out of your control. And that's similar to what life can throw at you. So I think cricket's really a practice ground for life.
And then how did you get into high performance and mental coach? What inspired you to get into that path?
I always knew at school that I was going to study psychology. I ended up starting with sports science, and sports science at Stellenbosch University kind of triggered the curiosity around everything that I used to do as a sports person, now from the other end. So when we had our performance coaches and our strength and conditioning coaches, I got to see finally why they were doing what they did and what it actually meant. But then my love for psychology was always there, so I started to combine the two and started to try and integrate more of the mental skills into that performance space. And I think it's something that's grown quickly, but we're still far behind in integrating those two. So I just felt it's something I love. I love sport, I love psychology. If it's something I can put together and take forward in this world, then why not, you know?
And you say that psychology is something that you've always loved, but is there a moment where you remember that love for psychology just being activated or inspired by something?
It's funny that you ask. A friend of mine gave me a book at school, and it was a bunch of quotes by old psychologists and philosophers, Nietzsche and Carl Jung and all, and that really made me realize that I used to just think I think a lot about things. I'm an overthinker, as they would say, but I realized that I might actually have a gift for understanding the human condition a bit better. So yeah, that really stimulated it in me.
And how was your academic journey, and how did you find being able to be qualified? And take us through some of your qualifications that you've gained.
Sure. So I did sports science undergrad with psychology as a major. I then did my honours in psychology. Following that, I did a master's in research psychology through the University of Roehampton in London. And then after that, I managed to get in for my counselling psychology masters at UJ, which just finished quite recently. So that's my journey in psychology, and then I've done a lot of external things in sports psychology specifically, short courses and all things like that.
And I see you're donning your Equip t-shirts. Tell us about the brain and the business.
Okay, so Equip's a company I started in 2017, initially to work with children through a mentorship program. It was an EQ development company, hence the Equip, like the EQ. We had a lot of good business with Western Province Cricket, with development sides at some of the schools. We were doing a lot of development work, but obviously I needed to pivot into it being a real company and out of the kind of development space, just simply because it was limited in what it was doing. So I started to do some education, coaches education, offering some short courses, offering some workshops and things like that through it. And then that essentially grew into what it is now, which is an online platform for all things high performance, both education and coaching.
And your coaching philosophy, something that stood out for me is your motto that you share on your website, and that is suffering with meaning. Literally, when I saw that line, it made me think of, you know, the Stoic belief system, how you need to just embrace suffering in this life, and not shy away from it.
Yeah.
What inspired you to focus on sending out a message to say you need to understand what suffering is and the meaning behind it?
Yeah, I think when you, and I mean, this is not my quote, as you know, it's a quote from a song you just played me, and Carl Jung and Nietzsche.
Yeah, Friedrich Nietzsche.
Yes, so the quote "suffer with meaning" is really, if you start to attach meaning to your suffering, it ceases to be suffering, and it turns into a lesson or some sort of growth journey. You know, so I always believe that if we can find meaning in whatever's happening to us in life, then we can actually pursue it or get through it, or at least learn from it. So I had a period in my life where I was going through quite a hectic bout of depression and anxiety. And at the time I was studying, and the meaning I found in it was that at least now I'll know what my clients are going through one day, not from a theoretical point of view, but from a real life experience point of view. And I always used to write down my experiences just to try and learn from it. And I mean, through time, when I was healthy again and got through that, it's something that's sat with me for a long time. So depression and trauma is obviously a space I love to work in. But that's just a silly example of how you can find meaning in the most mundane places, but at least then it helps you pursue through that suffering a little bit more.
Yeah. And let's just get into that a little bit more and a little deeper, because I mean, we're facing Mental Health Month, and I think that's why I wanted to bring you into this conversation, so that we can get into the heart of mental health. You speak about you having your episode of depression. What do you remember about that period, having to identify depression, and what are the tools that you incorporated and exercised in order for you to get out of that dark place?
That's a very good question. I think the experience is difficult for people when they're younger, because it's almost a change in identity. So you used to maybe identify as a confident, sporty person, or an outgoing person, or a happy person, and then suddenly you can't get out of bed in the morning, and it starts to take over your identity, where you're like, well, I'm now a depressed person. And at the time before I was actually diagnosed, you actually don't even know what's going on. You're just feeling these feelings and you can't get yourself out of it. So it's a very dark space, it's a very lonely space, regardless of people being around you and supporting you. It's always a feeling of loneliness. So the best way to get out of that is to essentially, it's a weird one, but obviously through therapy you can be disciplined, making sure you're showing up, making sure you're doing the activities that the therapist might give you, but also making sure you're always striving for meaning and reminding yourself of where you really want to be in life. There's a lot of things, I mean, we can go on for hours on how to treat depression, but I think from a personal point of view, I knew it's not what I wanted to be, and I knew could get through it, you know. So I guess you could call that resilience or whatever, but I always knew this is not going to define me.
And what did you pick up from, you speak about how you did the theory, and then now there is the practicality of having to be in depression.
Yeah.
What did you pick up when you look at the theory versus actually being in it?
I think the theory, it's very difficult to try and explain experiences through theory, and there's so many different theories on depression, different theories of causes and treatment and everything. So it never quite matches it up. So I do feel the experience is the most important when you're working with depression, simply because you can truly be present with that person. If you're trying to be too theoretical, you might miss them as a person. And I think just being made to feel that you are a person that's being seen in that space is a big part of the treatment for it.
And you speak about, because you've experienced depression, it brings about a bit of weight and texture to how you then relate to some of your clients. Just take me through what that really does and unpack that for us.
I think if you think of being depressed and trying to tell your friends about it or your family, it's very hard for them to connect with you and to understand what you're going through. They can be there for you, they can console you, but to truly feel understood, it doesn't always happen. So I think it benefits me as a therapist because I can be there. It doesn't scare me. You know, the feelings that the client experiences, the thoughts they have, the suicidality doesn't scare me. It actually, in a weird way, it pushes me into a state of flow. The same way I would try and get a cricketer into flow. I feel when it really is a serious case sitting in front of me, I just get kicked into flow and I can just be with that person. Yeah, it's definitely helped in that sense.
And talking about, speaking to a cricketer, speaking about, getting into a flow state, let's hop on to just understanding and getting to know some of the work that you've done in the cricket space with teams and individuals.
Yeah, so I started with Western Province youth cricket. That was my first, well, other than the schools I worked at, but professionally the youth teams at Western Province, and kind of through that gradually up into the senior teams, the academy teams and whatnot. And then I moved over to Johannesburg, and I've been helping Sia out with the Lions when he was with the under-19s and things, the Cubs week sides, and then more recently with UJ Sport, again with Sia, funny enough. We seem to find each other along the way all the time. But just, yeah, with teams, with UJ Sport, all the varsity cup teams and things, but spend most of my time with the cricket, mainly because Sia demanded it. And then obviously a lot of individuals. So the individuals is where I've found my niche a little bit more. I tend to be better with individuals than teams. So I've invested more of my time. Obviously I can't mention names, but a couple of professional male and female cricketers in South Africa, yes.
So when you get that call and say, hey Nick, we need your services, whether you go to a team or a player, how do you start to begin the journey of having to help these particular individuals or teams?
I would always, the problem at the moment is with teams, there seems to be this trend where it's like you come in for one session, it's kind of a pep talk or motivational talk, and then they're going to feel better. Now I think you can make a small difference with one talk, but if you're going to make it a difference on a cultural level, you need to be integrated into the team. So I wouldn't work with the team at the moment if I'm not at least with them for a season.
Okay.
So I can truly work with the coaches, because I think that's important. Get to know the players, build trust with the players, get to understand their way of thinking. Because without that, I don't believe that I can make a long-lasting difference.
If let's say, for example, maybe AB were to call you, right? For example, if he called you and he told you that he had an issue with being off form, right? It's hard to think that AB would be off form. It's a bad example, but he has had that phase in his period. How would you then start to remedy a player that comes to you and say, I am off form, Nick, help me get to be in a state where I can rack in the runs? Yeah.
So with form, a player off form, so all my clients, I would do a full consultation. So I do an hour-long consultation, sit-down consultation with the player, and then I do a sit-down with the coach and any other collateral information that I can get. So if the parents are still involved, if there's a physio that they're working with, if they've been coming from an injury, physios and biokineticists often take quite a supportive role for the athletes. So I would talk to the physio, the bio, And then based on that assessment, we'll decide what's causing the lack of form. If it's purely coming from an injury, then time and hit more balls kind of thing, you know, just get back into it. But if it's a loss of form kind of in the middle of a season, you'd have to go a little bit deeper, and you'd have to start looking at are they in the right mindset. So you'd work on mindset, you'd work on getting them into a trusting mindset out of what I like to call a practice mindset, and we can get into that. But essentially the practice mindset is when we're thinking too consciously about every movement, simply not trusting in our what we like to call muscle memory. So every shot we consciously deciding what shot to play rather than allowing the body to trust and flow. So thinking is the number one thing that gets us out of flow, and when we're not getting into flow is when we don't have form. Because then we're playing too early, we're playing too late, we're playing the wrong shots, we're trying too hard, we're playing too many shots, all of those things. So essentially I would assume with form that the player is not getting into a state of flow, which essentially means they're too conscious in their thinking in the match, and then you build a practice mindset that they can work on, and then a trusting mindset that you take into the match.
So are you for or against premeditation in cricket?
No, it's context specific. I think premeditation, I like to call it intuition. If you have intuition, then it's going to come naturally to you. But obviously there's a time and place. So the way cricket's going at the moment, premeditation is quite important, but I think traditional Test cricket maybe not as much.
Yes.
With it's a fine line. You don't want your players not to think at all, and cricket's a funny sport. So you get the slow thinking sports and the fast thinking sports. So slow thinking sports would always rely on cognitive decision making, like golf. You know, you have time to walk to your ball, decide what shot you're going to play, and all of that stuff. Fast thinking sports like hockey or rugby, there's not a lot of time to think. So it's more instinctual. Cricket's a combination of both. So you have the off time to think, but then you also have that fast moment when the ball is coming to you. So you'd actually want your players to tap into their slow thinking skills. So while the bowler's getting ready to run in, then they can premeditate the shot. They're looking at the field. You want them to make decisions there. But as the bowler starts running in, they start moving into the trusting mindset, the fast thinking mindset, where they know in the back of their head what shots are available, but they're not thinking about the movement itself. The shot is still happening with muscle memory. So where the thinking comes in, where it's a problem, is if we're thinking about the actual movement, the muscular movement of the shot, where we're trying too hard to keep our elbow up or trying too hard to, you know, time the ball well. That should be trusting. But the decision making around the shot, that's fine, yeah.
Got you. And I want to throw a couple of more scenarios at you so that we can really unpack this. Based on the conversation that I had with my previous guest, which is Mangaliso Mosehle, he spoke about, and I shared this clip with you, about how he was constantly working with the potential tag, right? How he's always had this tag where, you know, either coaches or certain players would always imagine him to be at a certain level and play to his fullest potential.
Yes.
And that always hung, you know, at the back of his head. How do you remedy a player that comes to you and shares that story?
Yeah, when I watched that clip, I resonated with it because I think it happens so much. Currently, the way I think our system is set up, there is a lot of tags and external motivators for players to succeed. And external motivation is never a good motivator. It's a short-term, temporary motivator at best, but motivation should come within. And the best motivator from within is enjoyment. Regardless of the level you play at, you've got to enjoy playing, you've got to have fun what you're doing. When we become so over-consumed with external motivators, which is meet your potential, coaches' expectations, you know, expectations from friends and teammates and contractual obligations, when that's our driving force the whole time, then we forget about what actually makes us do well, which is being present with ourselves in the game, enjoying the game, and all of that stuff. So the first thing I would do is I would try and get the player to separate from that external motivation and tap into internal motivation, which essentially means go back to just enjoying it. And there's no better feeling in cricket than hitting the ball in the middle of the bat and it goes to the boundary. So get in the middle and just hit a couple of boundaries with no thoughts, expectations. Forget the scoreboard, forget everything. Literally, your only goal for that game is to feel the ball in the middle of the bat. It's such a simple thing. So you're breaking it down to the smallest, most basic thing for that player, which is the sole reason why they actually started to enjoy cricket as a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old. Because there's no other thoughts except, look how far I hit the ball. So you're kind of going back to that state of mind to exclude the external motivators. And then obviously external motivation is important. We want to make money, we want to earn good careers and whatever, but that's a bonus. That shouldn't be the driving force. So with the clip with Mangi, all I was thinking when I was watching it is, it looks like this player has forgotten to enjoy his cricket. And obviously I'm making an assumption, but it seems like there's this external drive. Potential. When you're going to meet your potential, when you're going to succeed, when you're going to become the next Black South African batsman. All of those tags get thrown around, and unfortunately it is mostly on the Black South African batsman because of the pressure around the country to increase the numbers in that field. And I've been in that space, as I said, working in the development sectors in Western Province. It's a massive tag, and if players aren't looked after holistically while pushed through these systems, then the only thing that they get driven by is this external person telling them, you're good, you should be better, you should be making more runs. And we want to get them to remember the internal stuff.
But also another factor that is at play, you know, speaking about Black African players, is the transformation and always feeling like as a black player you're there to set numbers, to meet the targets, and sometimes they don't feel like they are part of, they deserve to be in the starting 11. As a white person, if a black player were to come to you and share this with you, how would you be able to relate? Because maybe a player would say, but Nick, you're white, bro. Like, will you be able to relate? How can you then begin to help me out to get to a place where I know that I deserve to be here and that I won't allow this tag to kind of ruin just my state and how I can perform in the middle? Yeah.
The question on if they believe I can relate is a very good question, because a lot of them don't believe that. And fair enough, you know, and I don't expect to change their minds on that. However, there are certain things that are needed for high performance to succeed in a high performance space. And if you don't have those, you'll never succeed regardless of your skin color or any pressures. So my job is not to try and convince you of anything other than to help you become a better player and to help you develop the certain behavioral, mental, physical skills that you need to succeed at a high level, because that's what it comes down to. You can get picked for different reasons at different age groups, but when you get to the top level, the winning is the only thing that matters, and essentially then they're going to always pick the best team. So you just got to make sure you're one of the best players. So I like to say, well, let's forget about what I look like or what you look like and what you think I'm thinking, what I think you think. That's getting in the way of our success together. So you want to be a better player, you want to feel that you're better. Confidence needs evidence. Let's get you some evidence. Let's make you a better person, a better player, and then we see what comes from there.
Confidence needs some evidence. I love that. I love that. So speaking on transformation, as a white South African who used to even play cricket, what are your thoughts on transformation in South Africa?
I think cricket's doing it the best way it possibly can be done. There's a lot of investment in the youth. I think the only way it works is to start young. Unfortunately, becoming the type of person that can be a high-performing athlete is more than just being good at a sport. And to become a better person, you need access to certain things from a young age when the actual development of personality is happening. So when we're developing personality, developing emotional skills, emotional intelligence, resilience, it happens at a young age. It happens before the age of 8 sometimes. It happens between 6 and 18. So that's really when we've got to invest in it. And so I think cricket's doing it better than most other sports that I've been involved in. However, it's never perfect because there's so many external role players in this thing that I have no idea about. I don't know what the expectations are. I don't know what the pressures are from the top. But what I do think is that for transformation to work, it's got to start early, and it's got to be an investment into the youth rather than an investment into certain key players that at 18 years old are shining a little bit, you know what I mean?
So you're certainly for it?
Yeah, it has to happen, yeah.
And coming back to Mangi's situation, I'm just using him as an example because I had this conversation with him. So we spoke about potential, but on the opposite end of the spectrum, there were moments where he had such incredible innings, you know? And one thing that we spoke about in the previous episode is that he had stunning innings where he hit 80-something odd runs of 30 balls in a ram slam. And I remember him saying that he remembers waking up in the morning and just feeling good. And feeling like something good is about to happen. And I remember just thinking how a player can try and replicate those feelings match after match, and is it even possible?
It certainly is, at least as much as possible. What I would love to ask Mangi is to keep a bit of a notebook on his thoughts. Small things that can come into play there are what time you went to bed and things like that, the feeling good part. But I think essentially you've got to keep track of your mindset. So I like to have athletes keep track of what happened, because then when we do imagery and visualization and we're repeating the good innings, which essentially builds the narrow pathways that are forming with those good innings, which then would lead to a better chance of repetition. So we need to do visualization and imagery to mimic and replicate the good innings that we've played, but we can't do that if we forget what happened in the good innings. So to write down your thoughts and your emotions, and then have the physical part of it, the actual scoring of runs, together make a better chance of replication than just the scoring the runs. So for a player like Mangi, the good moments need to be written down. Some of the thoughts, some of the things, maybe the self-talk that he said to himself. And then when we do visualization with a player like that, or imagery, we start in the beginning of the day. We don't just replay the innings he played. We start waking up. What did you do? You know, you replicate the day to make it as realistic as possible. So when we're doing imagery helps with a whole lot of things, but mostly it helps with consistent confidence, because it's replaying that evidence in your mind, and if it's done well enough, the mind starts to believe that it's real, and then those neural pathways are being formed.
And how would you facilitate that session, and how long is it, the imagery and visualization?
I think I would do, depending on the age of the player, younger players struggle for long periods of time. Someone like Mangi, I would do the entire innings ball for ball. Wow. So if he's faced 60 balls, he's going to be lying on his back with his eyes closed, replaying 60 balls, ball by ball. And we don't move on from a ball until he remembers it. And you'll be amazed how players can remember every single ball they faced in an innings.
Irrespective of how many years or months have gone by?
The further away, the harder it is.
Okay.
We generally, within a month, they'll remember. And when you start with them, they'll say, no, I remember my first boundary, I remember my second boundary. But when you go into that state of flow, it's almost the hypnotic state with the imagery. There's no distraction, so the mind taps into that memory, and it is a memory, so it doesn't go away, and they can remember ball for ball. But it takes a lot of work. It takes priming of the mind, so we do about a 20-minute priming session beforehand, but it can be up to 2 hours. Yeah.
Wow. And earlier on I spoke about AB. I made a scenario about AB de Villiers, and I remember reading his book, and there's in the first chapter he speaks about the innings that he had in this very stadium at DP World 1, right there, the pitch, and when he was playing against West Indies, and he had those brilliant innings. I think he hit over 100, over 30 something balls, if I'm not mistaken. And I remember reading that chapter, and there's a part where he speaks about how he needed to, you know, especially after you celebrate your half century and your century, he speaks about how he needed to pull himself back immediately in that very moment, so that he doesn't wonder or over celebrate. How important is to do something like that, where you're not caught up in the moment or the excitement of your success, but you pull yourself back so that you could continue just racking in the runs? Yeah,
I think one of the top 5 mental skills any cricketer can have, or any sportsman, is what I like to call recovery. You might call it responsiveness. But essentially that is, with anything that kicks you out of your flow, how quickly can you recover and get back in? And AB is obviously one of the leaders in that. And what he mentions there is essentially that recovery of flow. Ceases to exist in your mind. Now you're celebrating, so suddenly you're paying attention to everyone around you. So you have left flow. But then to be able to pull yourself back in there, that is why so many players go out the ball after they get to a century.
Yeah.
And also
the ball before the century.
Exactly, yeah, because it's the crowd, it's the slow clap that comes in. All of that is a distraction pulling you out of flow. And essentially, if you're not in control of that, that's why I spoke of cognitive control earlier, then you'll never get to that point where AB was, because that is one of the fundamental mental skills to have.
But how do you zone in then? How do you zone in?
How do you get back in, or from the start?
No, how do you zone into that moment where we speak about the slow clap, you're cognizant of the hundreds and thousands of people at the stadium, and make sure that you don't get out of that state?
You just don't. you don't try to avoid the distractions. If you're trying to avoid something in your mind, if you're trying to pretend it's not there, and you're telling yourself, don't pay attention, don't listen to them, that's paying attention to it. The mind has a finite amount of energy it can pay attention with, and if you're giving some of that energy to the wrong thing, even by telling yourself not to, it's doing it. Then you're taking away potential on something else. So it's okay to accept that it's happening and say, okay, cool, now I'm here. And then you have your 2 or 3 cues that I would like to teach athletes, is you have a thinking cue, a visual cue, and maybe an auditory cue. So you'll use those cues to pull yourself back, and you need to practice this in the practice mindset that I mentioned earlier, so that you can trust in it. But the thinking cue would be a kind of a mantra you say to yourself. So something like watch the ball, or you've got this, or anything. I mean, I'm trying to come up with examples, but the players decide on it themselves. Yeah. Then the auditory cue would be normally like tapping your bat on the ground, so that brings you back to here. And then you'll have like a breath work thing, so 3 deep breaths, close your eyes for 2 seconds, say your mantra, and you kind of bring yourself back. Now, not every player needs that, because most of the time players like AB have kind of built that natural ability. But if you're struggling with it, then having those 3 cues to come back in. And I'm sure AB did a version of that without maybe knowing he's done it. He probably did say something to himself. He probably did tap his bat against it. Yeah. And have a bit of a self-talk moment. Maybe he did take a couple of deep breaths. But players aren't always aware that they're doing the right things. But that's how you teach it. Yeah.
Something I want to get into is injury. You know, a lot of players face injury, and it gets to be a bit tough, especially if you continue to get injury throughout the season. Prime example, our captain Themba Bavuma, he's gone through a lot of injuries. And how would you begin to have conversations with him? Maybe because, I mean, it plays at him mentally, and maybe it might even start affecting the way that he plays, because maybe he might be cognizant of the fact that he doesn't want to be injured. So it kind of restricts him a bit. How would you remedy someone who's going through injury time in and time again?
So Themba needs to be able to bring it back to the internal. Now, it's not that easy to do, but with injuries specifically, what it causes is frustration, because it's not like you're taking time off but you can go and practice. It's time off and you can't do anything. So what I like to do is I like to work with coaches during injuries and physios and bios, where players are attending the practices, and when it's their time to bat, they're lying on the ground doing a full innings visualizing, or they're doing reaction drills or timing drills. So they're still working on a skill that's going to benefit them and keep them in form. So you can underpin the physical skills like a timing drill or a reaction drill with some mental skills, some visualization. Or you can just do an imagery session where you're replaying an old innings where you scored a century. So with injuries, you should be staying involved as much as you can and doing things at practice that mimic a real practice, so that you don't feel like you're not falling behind. So you don't feel like you are falling behind, sorry. Because then what happens is the frustration builds, and with the frustration builds, we try too hard, we're too rushed to get back, then we get back and we need to prove things, the focus goes to the external again. So it's almost a preemptive thing. Before the frustration of the injury kicks in, keep working on stuff, not just the rehab. The rehab is very demotivating for players. You need to do stuff that's in the nets, on the field with your teammates. You can't just be sitting watching.
And you talk about social media, and we're living in times where we can't ignore social media, and there's always a lot of backlash towards Themba. And of course it can play its part in how it translates in the middle. How do you start by advising someone to shut out the noise, don't focus on what people are saying, even if they are against you? How do you kind of have razor focus towards your own game and being at your best?
This is the problem. So when things are going well, like they were a while back for Themba, and then he got made the captain and things, players don't always feel they need to build these rigid skills to help them when it's not going well. And then when it comes to the point where it's not going well, they actually have no idea how to pull themselves back. So there's got to be quite a strict framework for you getting into your mindset, getting into a trusting mindset, getting into a state of of self-belief and confidence, regardless of what your form is at the moment. That's why I said spending time for a whole season with the team is much better than 1 or 2 sessions, so that you can build those structures, so that when something like this happens with Themba, he's got the skills to say, well, I don't need to do anything different, just back to my processes that I've been doing. But if there's no processes in place that are not just thought out processes that are integrated into his kind of muscle memory, then it's a very tough road to get back, because sometimes, and in cricket, you fail 6 out of 10 times, 7 out of 10 times. So the chances that you fail because you just failed and not because it's related to your form or anything else is quite big. So now you've got 1 bad innings, 2 bad innings, lack of form, and then you might have a day where you could score runs, but then the ball doesn't bounce and you get caught LBW, and then the media's on your back again. So if you don't have your processes in place, then you kind of lose control of that situation, and that's detrimental.
And to wrap things up, I have a burning question. So I used to play cricket, right up to the under-19 level. And I remember being an average player. Right, I was an average player. I mean, even if I never even entertained the idea of wanting to get to the national side, right? But I want to find out from you, especially the work that you do. Are you able to take an average player to be one of the best players? How much can skill come into place, talent come into place, versus you really training really hard and upskilling a person to a point where they could become one of the best? Yeah,
it's a very good question, and I believe you can. I think nurture is much bigger than nature, and I speak about that quite scientifically. The nurture aspect of any development or learning from children to education to sport, nurture seems to dominate over nature. The brain, which is the learning kind of center for physical and mental skills, is very plastic, which essentially means you're able to learn new skills, and it's full of potential. So you can learn new skills with enough practice regardless of what you were kind of predisposed with. So yes, I think if you do it the right way, and if you put in enough effort, and then the other personality traits match, because I think personality is a big part of being successful, then yes, definitely. I mean, we've seen amazing sports people skillfully that don't make it because of the wrong personality traits and behavioral traits. So that's an important part that people miss. But if you're working on that along with a skill, I think you can turn an average player into a world-class player.
So if I had met you at 15 or 16, you think you would have made me one of the best players?
I think I could have led you in the right direction, but you can lead a horse to the water, but you can't make him drink.
That's very true. That's very true. Okay, well, this was a great conversation. I've learned so much, man.
Oh, thank you very much.
I'm hoping that there'll be a couple of players that have listened into this conversation and hopefully be able to implement some of the things that you have shared on this platform.
Sure, yeah.
I think they carry so much weight. But moreover, maybe hopefully you'll get a couple of calls from
I'm always open
players.
to that. Yeah.
I'm going to ask Mangi to call you. He must put a match-winning performance soon.
I hope so. I really enjoy watching him play. That would be good.
Yeah, great. Yeah. Do you have any questions? V, our producer.
So my question is, do you think, like sports in general in South Africa, they give enough support, like mental support to their players?
No.
So
they don't at all.
Just like that?
Let me just paint a brief picture. So at UJ Sport, there were over 400 scholarship sports students, and there's one lady working in the sports psychology department, and she's also responsible for the academic side of things. So one lady cannot service 400 athletes in need, and that's just a simple example. When I was working, much of the work I've done within South African sports has been for free, simply because if I was expecting to be paid, I wouldn't have a job, or I wouldn't be able to at least do the work. So no, there's not enough support, but it's definitely getting better, but it's not there yet.
Who's your top 5, Nick?
Sorry?
Who's your top 5?
Top 5 what?
Of cricket players in South Africa.
South African cricket players.
All time.
All time.
Hey, all time even.
It's
okay.
Give me a second to think about that. I grew up loving Hansi Cronje.
Before the scandal.
Of course, before the scandal. And Hansi's parents were looking after me a lot of my life in Bloem, so it was more of a personal thing. So I can't not put him in the list.
Okay.
Then I would say South African. There's a sudden long list that's popping in.
What do you like about Hansi that attracted you?
I think I related to Hansi at the time because he was the hero that everyone wanted, you know. He was captain, my captain. So he was just the guy that was on the adverts, similar to Siya Kolisi, the rugby now. He was everyone's favorite captain. But I'm a similar type of cricketer to Hansi, so I think that was it. I then ended up captaining my school team that Hansi captained, so one of my honors is to have my name on the board, the same board as Hansi at school.
Yeah.
But I think my ultimate favorite must be, I really enjoyed Ashwell Prince. Ashwell Prince was one of my favorite test players to watch. Currently I'm loving Riley Rousseau back in the setup, I must be honest. Sean Pollock, I always enjoyed him. As a bowler, Dale Steyn has to be right up there. Jeez, there's so many. It's hard to pick five.
And have you met majority of these players?
Yeah, so I met Hansi when I was younger. Obviously, he passed away when I was still young. Ashwell and I have done some work together. Ashwell's done some courses through our company and at Western Province when he was there still. Dale Steyn I've met because he was working in Cape Town when I was working there. Sean Pollock, Jar Colours, maybe as a fan on the side here signing autographs, but nothing more than that. Yeah.
Here at Wanderers?
No, wherever. Yeah.
I thought maybe you were talking about being here.
Yeah. Obviously, AB is also, right up there. Yeah.
You speak about, Hansi having a certain image about him, captain, my captain, and then you talk about Siya Kolisi as well. I mean, he brought us the World Cup here at home.
Yeah.
Are such leaders made, or they're born like that? Because I'm trying to think of us having the first black captain in South Africa, but somehow there isn't that look and feel, and just the whole country rallying behind him. Sometimes he feels like he's just, captain on his own,
Yeah.
And there's just a small majority of people that are backing him. Why do you think that is?
Are you talking about Siya Kolisi?
No, I'm speaking about Temba.
Temba, yeah. I struggle with that when I watch, when you go on Twitter and you see the things being said. I struggle with it. I don't get it. I think Temba's more often than not proved that he's an excellent batter. I can't remember when it was. There was a time when he first got pushed up the order to open the batting. I think the first game he scored a 50 or 49, and I was very impressed with how he played that innings. He's not going to set the world alight like AB, but he played some excellent shots. Yeah. So I think he has it, and I don't know why. I don't know what the thing is, because who's the alternative right now in the PITCHSIDE setup? There's no one that stands out as this obvious captain. You know what I mean? So why not build a new team? It is a young team. It's a new kind of generation coming through behind one player. The way the rugby backed Siya Kolisi and said, well, Rassie Erasmus said, I don't care what the media says. This is my guy. And when we finally won the World Cup, people got behind him. So maybe if we win the T20 World Cup, people will get behind Temba. But
what are our chances? What do you think?
I think we're in an easy group. I think that the draw against Zim with the rain didn't help us. Yeah, I don't know when this is airing, so we might have been in the semi-finals by the time we watch this. But I'm hopeful, because I think one or two of our players, I think our bowling is sorted. If one or two of our batsmen come off like Quinton did the other day, yes, each match, we're unbeatable. But we don't always do that, so we just need that to happen,
I love that.
Yeah.
There's some optimism from you. We love that. Another question to wrap things up. We're good. And there you have it. The next episode. No, not the next episode. What am I trying to say? That's it from us, basically. Do you want to say bye to everybody, Nick?
Hi, everyone.
Did you enjoy this conversation?
I did. Thank you very much. It was awesome.
Thank you. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe. It really would be great to hear your thoughts and opinions on how this episode went. All right, bye.